Let's talk technology as we do every now and then with Matthew Dickerson, our regular expert. How are you this morning?
I'm fantastic, thanks, Nick. It is great to be chatting some technology again.
It is great to be chatting technology again. Look, something you love, something we do talk about quite a lot, electric vehicles. When we chat about them, tends to be a bit of well, hang on, what about the charging? What do I do when I run out? Why does it take so long to charge? Has someone in America found an interesting solution to this?
Well, it is an interesting solution. And if we go back before I talk about that and just talk about phones for a second, most modern phones have got wireless charging capability. So that's fantastic. We've got a charging pad, we sit a phone on top, needs to be about the right spot, and away you go. That same concept is available in cars in your garage. So you've got a wireless charger sitting in your garage floor designed for your car. You drive your car in, you park over that spot, you get out, your car starts charging. That sounds fantastic. But imagine if you did that while you're driving along. And that's exactly what Indiana in the US is doing. They're doing a trial, first of all. It's only a 1/4 mile long piece of highway, but it will be a magnetised highway. As you drive your electric car along that bit of highway with the electric wireless charging component on the bottom of your car, then that will actually charge up your car. So it sounds fantastic. If this is successful, they want to develop more highways, longer pieces of roadways, and then it will be a case of you jump up in the morning, oh, gee, my electric car is almost flat. I better take the electric highway on my way to work today. And, of course, you get to work and go, that's fantastic, my car is fully charged now. So the concept is great, and wouldn't that put an end to those negative Nellies, as you said at the beginning, that say, oh, electric cars, they're all right except how long it takes to charge them. This would put an end to that. And also, they're looking at doing this in things like car parks as well. So you go and park your car, park in these 10 spots while you do your shopping and you come out. You haven't had to plug anything in. You haven't had to do anything. You just park the car and it wirelessly charges.
Is this the first place that's tried to do this, or is this a bit of a known technology?
It's not. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's completely known technology. There have been some other places that have tried something similar. So over in South Korea, it was tried, but it was specifically with some buses. So they actually had some electric buses, and they were designed specifically for this bit of roadway. So that's what kept them charged up. A little bit like a railway constructs overhead power lines. They just had the power lines under the road and charged wirelessly. You've also had in Israel, they've actually done something similar to what's happening in Indiana. No surprises that Norway, the number one country in the world for electric vehicle concentration, they've actually got some highways that are being used right now as we speak. Sweden's done a little bit as well. This is the first time in the US, though, and breaking into that US market where they do like their trucks, they do like their SUVs, and they do like burning petrol, then getting into that market, I think, is important. So this is the first one in the US.
I use a charging pad for my phone, and all I will say is that while I love it, it's not as fast as plugging it in. And I'm guessing that's a similar situation here, or are we not sure?
Spot on, and that's one of the big discussions around electric vehicles. Every new electric vehicle that comes out, they talk about their range, and then in the next breath they talk about how fast they can charge. And there's a whole range of different charges available. With electric vehicles charging wirelessly, yes, they're slower. And even the ones that you put in your garage, even though that's a contained environment, you know the total environment, they're still going to be slower. So you're spot on there. It's more that convenience. And I think that's the real secret here. Just imagine your commute to work involving charging. Now, I think there's some logistics to get through here. The tollway that you might pay to go on that particular bit of motorway, do you have to pay more on that tollway if you've got an electric vehicle? I don't know the answer to these questions yet, but they're the things that we'll have to work out as we go forward in this space going forward.
Very, very interesting. From electric vehicles to drones, major cities all around the world, I can get something delivered to me by drone. I can get a coffee. I can get my let's just leave it at popular online store purchase delivered to me via drone. I could probably get a burrito and maybe even a beer. What about a drone that's actually doing something in terms of health and helping people get better?
Well, that's exactly right, and this has been tested by the military. And look, I think there are some military applications for this, but often military applications flow through into society. The British commanders have been doing some testing out on the field, simulating situations where they might need blood delivery. Now, you've got medics out in the field, you've got people that get injured in the field. Sometimes they can get patched up, but the loss of blood is what ends up being the thing that is the critical part of it. You're not going to have people running around with their guns out in the field with some blood in their backpack because A, probably not very convenient, but B, it needs to be kept at certain temperatures so it's of some use. But these drones will be sent in, if there's an injury in the field, sent in with blood, fresh blood, back from wherever their headquarters might be. But they're not your average drone. They're not the sort of drone that you go up to a white goods retail store and pick up and say, right, I'll just strap a bit of blood to the bottom of that and off it goes. It's out into the war zone. It's obviously a little bit more advanced than that, but it's also able to carry a little bit more weight. So they've got a range of about 43 miles. I do apologise for the Imperial. We are talking about the British testing here. They can fly for about 36 minutes and they can carry a fair payload. You're talking about 140 pounds can be carried on these. So they're fair-sized drones. Even though they're that size, they're still quite hard for the opposition to take them out of their sky. So if they see a drone flying along, taking some critical supplies to the troops on the other side, they can't just pull up their rifle and take a little pot shot and away they go. They'll knock it out of the air. They're quite manoeuvrable, they're quite small, they're quite hard to take out. So they're great for delivering those sort of small supplies, then send back to the headquarters to pick up other things. Ammunition is the other one that they're talking about using in these experiments they're doing over at the moment with these simulated war games they're playing. Because again, when you're out in the field, there's only so much you can carry. If you run out of ammunition, well, then you're just a sitting duck, aren't you? You're not really that useful out in the field. So getting ammunition via drone as well as the other part.
Let's change to the topic that I have been fascinated about all morning. A few years back, even a couple of decades ago, cryogenics, as we called it back then, was all the rage. The idea that you, either if you had a terminal illness or at the point of death, you'd have your body frozen, you'd wait years, decades, centuries, whatever it took, they'd be able to thaw you out using advanced technology we don't have now, heal you up, extend your life. No one's talked about it for a while, and yet suddenly we might have a cryonics facility in Australia.
Exactly right. And let's just focus on the words there for a moment, Nick. You've got cryonics and you've got cryogenics, and people often get those two confused. Cryogenics is actually the study of low temperatures. Cryonics is the study of putting people into that sort of suspended animation. So those two words are often switched around. They do have different meanings. But you're right, halfway between Sydney and Melbourne, there's a facility there that's getting its final approvals. Not an easy thing to do with something so new, but the final approvals to be able to put people into that suspended animation, into a frozen state. Now, the director of this particular facility, he says himself, I'm not sure if it'll work. I'm not sure if we'll be able to bring you back in 10, 20, 50, 100 years' time. But look, I'll take your money for the moment and we'll have a go for you. No guarantees there. No human has ever, apart from in science fiction, no human has ever been put to sleep, frozen as such, and then brought back at some future point in time. They've managed to do it. The best so far is with some Russian roundworms. Now, there's a little bit more complexity to the human body than a roundworm, and they've only just managed to do it with roundworms, so I think they've got a little way to go. One of the big issues is if you completely freeze something, and people have probably seen those experiments they do with a leaf of lettuce, and you put it into some liquid nitrogen, and you pull it out, and you thaw it back out, but it's all lost its shape and form. Because when water freezes, water expands. And so in the human body, we've got about 70% water. So if we just go and do a quick freeze on us, that water expands and basically breaks down our cell structure. You warm us back up and we're just a bit of a blob of meat and stuff. So that's the real issue here, trying to get people into that suspended animation. But if you've got 50 grand spare, Nick, you can pay 50 grand to this facility as a founder fee. The normal fee is 150, so it's a bargain at the moment. And that 50 grand doesn't have to be for you. That $50,000 can be for a friend of yours, a relative, whoever. So you pay your $50,000. Please put my Uncle Jimmy into suspended animation, and then at some point in time, who knows, they'll try and bring him back. And you don't have to keep paying. That's the nice part. It's not like an annual fee, because they probably would have trouble getting the fee out of the person. The 50 grand or the 150 grand covers you for the life of suspension, whatever that life may be. It all sounds very interesting, doesn't it?
The business model is pay me money and I will freeze you, and hopefully in the future someone will have invented a way for you to be unfrozen, because we definitely can't do that now.
Correct. And the eerie part about this will be, as we're driving along between Sydney and Melbourne, we're going to drive past a facility that's going to have, eventually, they're saying around 600 to 800 people there. There'll be a caretaker there 24 hours a day. Now, they'd have a pretty strong sort of mental approach, I would think, because going to work, especially in the night shift, when you've got 600 to 800 people frozen there, going there and just sitting around and making sure everything's going okay, making sure all the machines are working correctly, and then coming back home the next day, it'd just be a little bit eerie, I would think.
It'd be eerie, but you'd also want to make sure you knew where the fuse box was. You don't want to be the person who's the caretaker in charge of the power outage.
That's right. What happened? Well, last night I had a little power outage. I couldn't remember how to start the backup. Sorry.
It was just a microwave. I was just trying to get a burrito.
That's right.
Would you do something like this, Matthew Dickerson?
I wouldn't. I just don't think. Well, there's a couple of things there. I actually believe in the circle of life. You know, we're born, we replicate, and we die, and I think there's a beauty to that whole circle of life. But I just don't feel enough confidence in the technology yet. And are they going to get there at some point in time? Oh, I don't know. It's a tough one, and we're obviously throwing some resources at it. But I think there's probably some other things we can throw some health resource money at rather than this one.
Yeah, maybe one or two. Matthew Dickerson, thank you. We'll talk again in a fortnight.
Thanks, Nick.